Good afternoon and welcome to a special MIP Alumni panel discussion titled Responding to COVID-19, the Women's Game. The reason why we're here is in response to COVID-19, particularly focusing on the impacts this global pandemic will have on the future of the women's game. Reports have shown that there is a real concern that women's football is at risk of mass unemployment and teams could go extinct if clubs do not put adequate financial plans in place to carry them through this crisis. FIFPRO General Secretary Jonas Beer-Hoffman has warned that COVID-19 poses a far greater risk to the women's game than the men's, and that women's teams must be given priority access to pitches and facilities once sport resumes to help ensure their survival. FIFPRO also fear a string of clubs will become insolvent as a result of the global health crisis, owing to few professional leagues, low salaries, and uneven sponsorship deals. On today's panel, I have the great pleasure of welcoming some esteemed guests and friends in the shape of former Germany international Bianca Reich, Bayern Munich Women's Sporting Director, former France international Bruno Cheroux, PSG Women's Sporting Director, and former Germany international Viola Adibrecht, RB Leipzig Women's Sporting Director. All three are alumni of the Executive Master for International Players and members of the MIP Alumni Association, which has the ambition to play an active role in football through the promotion of education, expertise, and integrity on and off the pitch. Thank you all for joining me, team. I trust everyone's keeping safe and well. How have you been doing at home? So how have you kept yourself active? And what chance have you had to try some new things, maybe on social media or even some new skills, Viola?
Oh, actually, we could do home office. I took all my monitor and my laptop with me at home and worked from there. Try to, keep in touch with the players, keep in touch with the trainers, try to organize from home, try to organize the next season, kind of those stuff. So,
Bianca?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty much the same. I think the only biggest difference at the moment is that we are our first women's team count as a professional team, which helps us to, or allows us to play train on the field. I mean, train, not play. So we are in the fourth week already playing, training in small groups. So I think this makes, the normal day a bit different from probably other ones or from Viola's, because we're luckily a professional team and the German law allows to train in small groups on the field.
Is there anything you've been doing personal to keep yourself fit?
Well, I think everyone does something different since you can't go to some fitness classes anymore. And I mean, before we start training with the team on the field, this is something probably new to all of us, using all these platforms as Zoom and to do some training sessions via kind of cyber training. I think this is something which is probably new to everyone and getting used to all this technical stuff and IT stuff. So this is also a very interesting journey, I would say.
Strangely enough, since this lockdown, I've been more fit. I'm doing more workouts now than I ever did since I retired. Bruno, you've been doing any social media, keeping yourself active?
No, sorry for social media, but I'm not a good client and I don't have any. But I've been quite busy, to be honest. As Viola said, we have to deal with the situation actually from a HR legal point of view, and in Paris Saint-Germain women's section, we have around 70 people working. So we have to deal with all of them to see how to manage the situation. This is something really interesting because from an HR point of view, I was not really an expert, and now I'm not an expert anymore, but I have some more input and I have more clues about all that stuff, which is a part of the job, a part of the business. And this is an interesting part. After, to be honest, I hope it won't happen every year, because it has been a nightmare so far to deal with all that kind of situation. There is no ideal situation, but that was a bit tricky. And of course, we have to plan, even if it's a bit difficult, we have to plan next season with the new seasons coming up, staff, roster, players leaving, players coming. And this is not ideal, but we could do it from home, lockdown, and quite busy.
Okay, thanks, Bruno. Essential part, I think, of today's discussion is in light, of course, of the recent FIFPRO paper, which has warned that the growth of professional women's football and the evolution into a strong and viable industry is particularly threatened by the implication of COVID-19. Now, also the absence of basic worker protection and global industry standards for working conditions in the women's game also mean that the livelihoods of female players are extremely vulnerable. FIFPRO, however, have maintained that their top priority, as it should be, is regarding the public health and safety issues around COVID-19. We've also seen reports indicate that FIFA have reassured all of their stakeholders that it will not cut a promised $1 billion of investment into women's football as a result of this global pandemic. I hope through this video call, collectively, we can look at some of the challenges that the football family will face during this pandemic, highlight what is working successfully from your experience and what areas of the game are most at risk, and identify maybe what role a network of former international footballers now working in various senior positions across football can do to respond to COVID-19. First of all, what are your respective organizations doing to prepare for a safe return to action? Obviously, things are varied from a government perspective, whether it's in France or whether it's in Germany. Bianca, you touched earlier about your situation as a professional team. What are your organizations doing? What are Bayern Munich doing to ensure a safe return to action?
Well, I think, first of all, I have to say I'm quite lucky that I'm working for a club like Bayern Munich, because they're really taking care about their employers. They're really taking care that everyone is safe. This is the first priority before everything else, which I think is amazing. And this is the same we want to assure for the players as well, what we're doing. So actually, I mean, the men's team, they did the first step back on the field, and all this, the measurements, all the healthy measurements, everything, what they are doing, we do the same. So there's no difference. They're making no difference between, you know, the men's or the second men's team or the women's team, which is good, and also gives the players a very good feeling to to feel safe. Because I think it's not that easy. In one way, you go and train on the field, and on the other hand, as you said, the government giving some rules that you're normally not allowed to, let's say, go out and meet other people, and you're allowed to go on the training field. So, and I think you have girls which are, you know, thinking a bit more than you know, like normally, and I think everyone does that at the moment, and maybe request things, and which things are not normal. But here in Bayern, it's really like you can feel very safe, and the club is doing everything they can, that you don't need to be scared, or so we really try to do and to get all the measurements.
Viola?
Yeah, it's kind of like the same. I mean, we in the women's section, we are playing in the third league, and it's kind of an amateur still, and we're not allowed to train. But we are kind of lucky that in our country or region in Sachsen, we don't have that much cases of COVID-19. So they said that we can practicing under the like control and under the rules from the government next week. So we try now to start to like dividing the players in small groups and try to put some all the rules in our training center to like give the players the opportunity to practice again, but like in small groups and not one-on-one, not on. And yeah, it's like the situation we don't know. Like we don't know what was the season right now is. Can we go up? Can we relegate? Can we not? The decision is still open. And but in the case Bianca says, we're kind of lucky that we under a club, a big club, RB Leipzig, and they try to salute everything that we can still work from the point we are right now, and can still relegate, can still play hopefully next season in the second league, and can develop still, and not that they say, okay, the women's football is not so important. And we're pretty lucky about that, and we're pretty lucky that we can go back next week on the training.
Bruno, both Bianca and Viola discussed about going back next week. Where are you as an organization at PSG, and of course in France?
So in France, the situation is a bit different than in Germany, where we are locked down for nearly 50 days now. And we are supposed to be unlocked the 11th of May, so next Monday. It's dictated by a government. It's not about football yet. It's more about, the country. But they decided already to stop all professional football, so for men and for women. So we know that season 19-20 is over, and we are supposed to be unlocked next week, as I said, but it doesn't mean that we could go back to training normally. We planned to come back to training only from mid-June. The reason for that is, of course, because I'm not at all an expert of medicine and about COVID-19, all my discussions are taken with the medical board of the club, where they remain at our disposal for each department, for the men, for the sponsoring, for each department. The medical board is available to answer some questions, and especially for us, women's section, if there is no emergency about going on the pitch because of non-competition, it's important for us to try to train, but there is no emergency, nothing really compulsory at all for the next month. So for May, all the players and the technical staff will remain at home and try to stay safe as long as possible, because we don't know exactly how the virus is gonna evolve. So I don't know if I answer your question, but the next steps would be to see how the situation evolves, and trying to plan to be back to training mid-June, with the first week of June, with the medical board, some tests about blood tests, physical tests, earth tests, and all kind of tests who can tell us a bit more about the last 2 months we spent, and if there's somebody who can be infected still. So this is how we can see the next coming weeks.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question? Do you is there a champion? Is there teams that relegate, or what? How do you go with the Champions League members for the next season?
It hasn't been decided officially yet, because from an amateur point of view, the French Football Federation decided a bit too early. So as you can imagine, for the amateur league, a lot of clubs have been not agree with the fact that they are going up, they are going down, they are not qualified, etc., etc. And so now French Football Federation is waiting a rule from the government, who will make the French Football Federation more powerful and prevent all the case of to be sued by any clubs who won't be agree with all what has been decided. So it's not official yet for the professional league and women especially, but to be honest, we are second. Lyon is first, 3 points ahead, even if we were supposed to play them and to receive them. So with a bit of luck, we could have been beat them and be ahead of them. I think the virus is the fault of nobody, and if the league table is stopped after the last games we played, I think it would have been the best decision and the fair decision.
Okay.
From a CONCACAF perspective, we suspended our March and June international windows, and now we're looking at September, and all of the feeling is that will be suspended as well. Our president, Victor Montagliani, did some interviews saying it could be that we're looking at 2021 before international matches are resumed, and we've cancelled all of our competitions, including our World Cup qualifiers, our men's World Cup qualifiers, our men's Nations League finals. But as ex-players, what procedures would we like to see put in place for when players return, with varying countries, varying teams being in different times within that growth? Viola, what would you like to see put in place to ensure that your players are protected?
What would I like to, what is the scene for the next season, or what do you mean?
What procedures would you like to see put in place to protect the players? What should be in place for the players as they come back to training and back to game, from your perspective as a player and now as a sporting director?
Good question. Actually, yeah, we follow just the rules what the government is giving us, like 2 meters distance, no one-on-one, no games, actually only passing, technical stuff, maybe a little goal shooting, and the players are not allowed to shower in our practice center, training center. They need to come with training clothes already and leave. The one group is not meeting the other group. We have the groups divided, like one trainer is training with one group, those kind of stuff. And then we kind of need to wait till they decide other stuff. We teaching our trainers. They need to like, for example, all the trainings stuff, like the cones and the balls and stuff like that, are only will touch from the trainers, not from the players. Those kind of stuff. We're trying to keep the rules, and then we think we are safe.
Bianca, Viola talks about keeping the rules and trying to be safe, but what can be done to protect players, and how will that affect the quality of the product? If you're training in small groups, you're not having contact on the training ground, what can be done from a player's perspective?
Well, I think first I want to come back to that question in the beginning, Jason. I think at the moment you see all the discussions, even in Germany, all discussions are about, about going back to play. It's about rights, it's about money, it's about sponsors, it's about, so many things, but you're not hearing the voice of the players. And I think it's a hard thing, because in one hand, I'm responsible for my players, working for a club, but on the other hand, I'm as well responsible for my players, and it's really hard sometimes, to see that there's no voice from players, and there's no one listening to the players' voice. And even in our case, I think it's really hard to see, you can't compare the men and the women's, you can't put them in the same thing. And everyone is saying, well, it's a chance for women's football at the moment. But, well, where is that chance? What kind of chance is it? We're talking about teams are getting bankrupt, insolved because of then can't handle money for not playing for like 6 weeks, and they're getting a lot of problems. So what is the chance now for us? And at the moment, I as well see the problems with players, that players' health, having no games for the last, let's say, 2-3 months, needs to go back and play within 2 weeks without no training. We have 5 years in a row in women's football, big tournaments, huge tournaments. So to move just calendar from one to the other, which means it's going to be, we're going to have a lot of problems. We already have issues with injuries, ACLs in the women's game, and I think this whole big picture is not seen at the moment. And therefore, I mean, in the end, I'm happy that we have sporting results, and everyone wants that, and everyone wants the sporting result, and we all want to go back to play. But we really have to make sure it's not about the measurements we have to take for the players' safety in regards to COVID-19. It is as well having the bigger picture about players' health going back to play, like the amount of games, the amount of trainings, different rhythm as they used to play. So I think there are a lot of other questions we have to raise.
Bruno, Bianca's raised some really important questions there around the women's game and how it can be brought back in, some of the procedures that need to be looked at. But the wider question, you have a unique vantage point, having been from the men's game and now operating within the women's game and at a huge club like PSG. What do you see to be done tailored towards women to ensure that some of the issues historically don't affect the women's program more than anything else in the club?
Can you just repeat last part of your question? How do I see?
How do you see a response being tailored specifically for the women's program as opposed to anything else because of the issues, the historical issues that we've seen in the women's game? What can be done?
Just to answer COVID-19, I don't know exactly, but from my perspective, as you said, coming from men's football, I think you have more flexibility in women's game to try to be innovative. And of course, we try to compare women's football with men's football, which is sometimes normal, but I think we have to create a proper women's model for football. And I think there is still a lot of flexibility because nothing is really set up. It's still moving a lot. It's still developing a lot. But, and I think Viola and Bianca can confirm, but we can be more innovative for women, to be a bit different, to be the same sport, of course, but maybe to find some different formats of competitions. And the calendar is obviously a big part, especially in women, where we have to know that international break and FIFA date were more important than in men's football. It's coming back a little bit more relevant, and it's a bit more normal for clubs now. And the repartition, the proportion of FIFA date and the club's date are more are better now, but it's still an issue. And I think we have to think about maybe sometimes different format, and Champions League can be one of the formats that we can experiment from an European perspective.
So, Bruno, in France, Ligue 1 and Ligue 2 seasons will not resume now after the government have banned all sporting events. What has been the immediate reaction in France?
I was happy. I mean, and with Bianca, we had a talk, and we had a big phone call this morning with UEFA about the fact that UEFA Champions League for women is not finished yet, and UEFA is still thinking about carry on with that. and only 2 people were not really comfortable with the fact to keep going. It was Bianca and me. And I think for sure Bianca wants to finish the competition. I want to win the Champions League. But the reason is more important than just winning a game or winning Champions League. And I think even if I want to finish with Champions League 1920, I think it would have been too difficult. And COVID-19 is already a big headache for everybody. And to try to finish some competition, sometimes it's still a bigger headache. So I don't know if you get me, but I have a big headache. And
No,
I need
I understand.
medicine.
Especially from a player's perspective, and it's not a surprise that both yourself and Bianca have similar views on this. While in Germany, it looks like we could see a return to action. What has been the overall feeling there, Bianca, Viola?
I mean, yeah, from the point of view that we are playing like the third league, I think we won't play any game anymore this season. And the direction, actually, when you talk to people, sorry, my cell phone is kind of moving. When you talk to people, is that the like all the teams of the first league. I mean, Bianca, you can get me that they want to play the season. They want to finish the season. So there will be a champion. There will be a relegates team. But no one knows actually what is with the second league, what is with the third league, and down there. So.
Bianca, you mentioned the game day experience and how things will transpire from that side. Have anyone here played in a game where there were no spectators, where a competitive game was actually played behind closed doors? Has anybody had any experience of that?
Not that
I mean, when I was young, there was only like 2 or 3 people standing outside, like the parents. And actually in the Bundesliga, no. Like even in the beginning, we had like 200, 300, 400 people are watching us. So a complete empty stadium, no.
Do you think that
it's probably weird? Even
do you think it will affect the game if we have no spectators? How will the players react to that?
I think it will be weird. I think, and I think it will be totally weird. You know, as I said before, there are like so many things which are kind of new and weird. And I had this discussion this morning. I was like, okay, what happened if you score a goal and you want to celebrate, but then you think, oh, I'm not allowed to celebrate with my teammates being near and hugging and whatever. So it's, you know, all this emotion you have in the game, you're like starting to think about it. This is like, I think it's really hard, and for the players, it's not easy at all.
The measurements really said that when you score or if you score that you not can hug your team?
No, it's not the measurement, but I think because you're, you know, when you're like around, when you travel with the bus, when you're in your local room, it's always said that you have to have a distance between 1.5 meters. So and then you go on the field, right? And then you want to celebrate with your teammates a goal or something, and then you think about, oh, I'm allowed to do that. So, you know, it's what the things which happen or what happened in your head. I think it's like this is good.
Yeah. But actually, I don't think that the not spectators are so affecting, like when you compare that to the first or second division in men's football. It's like in women's, it's, I mean, 1,000 people, 1,500. It's actually a lot, but yeah, I think it's a thing what you can live with when the season will start, or even next season.
We've spoken a lot about the professional game. From a women's football perspective, how do we feel that this could affect the grassroots, the participation level of the women's game? What impact could this potentially make?
Bruno, go for it.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's a pity, not just for football, but for sport in general, that some kids, when you're a teenager, you need to have some workout, to go out and to spend your energy you've got. So it's a pity that we have to be locked down for such a long time, but that's the way it is, and we have to deal with that. On the midterm perspective, I don't think it will affect grassroots for women. I mean, for next season, there would be some young ladies wanted to play football and gonna play for a club or anything like that. So I'm not sure it's gonna affect on the midterm the grassroots football for women.
Of course, this season started off with everybody extremely positive after a successful World Cup, generated so much interest in women's football. A year on, taking COVID somewhat out of the equation, what have you seen the benefits overall in the women's game to help it to go through this COVID crisis? What did we see in the added interest from the World Cup to ensure that women's football is thought of and is given more support up to this point? Bianca.
I think it's not a question at the moment about equality. We have to because the men's, that's why the women's have to. But I think it's also a chance that, you know, that everyone gets a chance. And I think for women's football it's the same thing. So it's a good chance to focusing more on women's football now, because it's more, how do you say, it's more human, more, yeah, how do you say, what can you say, what else? It's different, but it's not so much expensive than you would think about.
Bruno?
No, I mean, definitely World Cup last summer gave a big boost for women football and development, and I'm really confident that it's gonna keep going with that, especially because next Euro would be in England, and England is really a country who's leading women football and develops very well, especially on a local point of view, with really soon a professional football league with big clubs of men's football, also with Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, and all that big guns are really committed to women football, and it will bring and it will lift it up from the top. So this was some good point. I think in each country now you have more and more broadcasters interested in women's football. So the visibility and the fact that we're gonna be shown on TV is an important fact for the development of the sport. And yeah, this will bring step by step some more people in the stand, some more people wanted to invest in the model of women's football. So I'm really confident about the future. Once again, we have no way to compare with men. It will never be the same numbers, but it doesn't matter. I think we just have to bring women football market as high as we can. And even if the numbers are not that high, it's okay. You know, it's just a business model to find, and we're on the good way.
Viola?
I can't actually put the, because they said everything, I think.
We mentioned the scheduling and the opportunities to have a look at that as a result of COVID-19. There's also research that has suggested that women are up to 8 times more likely to suffer ACL injuries, something that Bianca referenced earlier. With the shallow squads and some of the limited resources and so many games, how can we look at the fixture list in a different way as a result of COVID-19 to benefit the women's game long term? Bianca.
Scheduling is hard. Bruno mentioned it before. I think all the release windows, FIFA, UEFA, club football, and because of club football is getting more and more professional, I think, and also, players have the possibility to get good contracts, a good salary, and like top clubs. I think, and even in club football in general, we're putting so much energy in it. I think it's important to also focusing more on club football, not only on national team football, which was a long time the biggest focus was always on national team competition. But I think there's a little change in it, and I think that's why, because more clubs are working more professional, giving more possibilities to players, a better infrastructure, better salary. So the whole package is getting better for players. And I think this we have to taking into account. That's why I think there should be also focusing more on club football. I think with the Women's Champions League in 21-22, the new format, I think it's one of the first steps to bring club football on a different stage. But I as well think on national team level, there could be also some, rethinking how can we structure it differently to not having too many release windows. Like at the moment, every single national team player is at least every month away, like 7 to 10 days with the national team, and the clubs are paying the players and not the national team. So I think we have to really rethink this model, and as well, thinking about maybe a club World Cup, something like this. I think, as Bruno mentioned, in women football, we have really the chance to develop different and to bring different formats to the women's football world. And I think there's still like an openness to try something different.
Bruno?
No, but I think to give a suggestion or maybe to throw an idea and to see how it's reached. But as Bianca said, to be pragmatic and to say something really, I think, why not thinking about a World League club? It doesn't exist in any sport, in anything. Why? Because women football market is a bit spread out all over the world. South America is not really developed. Africa is not really developed, but you play in Australia, you play in Asia a lot, and North America is a big market, as you may know, Jason. And so why not having a World League Cup with American club against European club against Asian club? I don't know, but it can be an idea, of course, because it would be worldwide. It must be led by FIFA. And I think it can be a good innovation. You can bring a lot of big sponsors. Maybe the format would be a bit reduced and not on a whole season. And you can bring some sponsor, you can bring some big broadcast. And when you see the attendance of a World Cup of Nations, you can expect that if Bayern Munich play against Sydney, or if Paris Saint-Germain play against Shanghai, or if Wolfsburg play against North Carolina, I would watch that game, to be honest. If I'm not part of the business, I would be happy to watch that kind of game because it's high-level games, it's high-level performances, and I think it can be, maybe an idea like that. It's easy to say. Of course, it's not easy to set up and to make everybody on the same line. But once again, I think women football, for the moment, allow a lot of flexibility, a lot of innovation. And why not going out of the borders, getting out of the comfort zone? And we need a bit of braveness from the top management of the big institutions. But yeah, we can create something good.
Viola, Bruno just mentioned support from the top institutions. FIFA have confirmed their investment of $1 billion in the women's game, that is protected and will be administered. How would you like to see that support developed through the game? How would you like to see that money and that support to promote what end within the game?
I think actually it's a circle, you know, like a lot of players, women's players, can't really live from their playing. They have other jobs, they have study, and that's kind of the problem, that they can't focus just on the game. And so the improvement of the game, like on the sporting sides, is slower than when you compare the improving of the men's game. And actually, I would like to see that they help the leagues and the associations to professionalize the leagues itself. Just when you compare, like it's probably in France the same thing as in Germany. Like I don't know, but I think in Bayern or in Munich and in Wolfsburg, they are much more professional than they are in Turbine Potsdam, the players in Turbine Potsdam. They need to work. They have a 40 hours work day, and then they go afterwards at 7 o'clock in the evening on the practice ground and training. So they can't focus just on football, and yeah, they need to improve actually that. And to go back from Bianca's point of view and Bruno's about think out of the box. I think that's the biggest question is then what do you do with the smaller countries with not so big association? They need the release the national team to improve or to get a little attendance in women's football. What do you do with that when you make maybe the world? What did you say, Bruno? World Cup.
World League Club. World League Club.
Yeah, exactly. So and the thing is, what I would say out of my experience is that the move, like when you have a management like Bruno or Bianca, they have ideas, they have good ideas, but to move or to step then forward to actually try maybe those kind of World Cup club. There are the top management kind of like to in their boxes to just try to let the women's game be a different one than the men's game. And that's kind of think what is the biggest deal in that question.
So what makes this conversation even more interesting is the fact that we've all been players and now we're operating on the management side in various roles. But from our playing side, do we have any concerns on the well-being of players who have now been in lockdown and maybe concerned about their next contract or uncertainty about themselves and their families and their lives? How do we have any concerns about the wellness and the well-being of the players from that regard? Bianca.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I can see it every day with my players. They're concerning about everything. We have players, maybe they didn't decide yet where to go, or they're leaving the club and they didn't decide before COVID-19. There's it's an issue. They don't know because the club where they were talking to, they stopped conversations because of our because of our plan, because our league was supposed to finish by next week. Now, players, for example, before the COVID-19 started, they kind of, finished their apartments. They said, oh, I'm leaving by end of May. So, players even having financial issues. So, and this becomes already not only an issue, like a financial issue, it's also a mentally issue because they don't know when they start, they don't know where they go to, and also physically is an issue because, they're scared to get injured because of having like a fast restart, having too many games in a short period as well, with a longer view in regards to national team players, seeing all the tournaments coming up in the next few years. And as Viola said, it's and even also FIFPRO, there are only 18% in the world who are really having contracts like on kind of FIFA regulations. So players are going to work. Even in our league, players are working. They're not full-time professional football players. So you can't put men's and women's first league in the same box, because they're different. So it's different. So we can't put all our energy, to go on the field, going to physiotherapy, and then the day is over. No, like players going to work for like 40-20 hours a week and then go to the trainings field. So it's really hard, and this is something we really have to take into account, and we really have to hear their voices, because it's so important. We can't just go over it and think, well, you have a project, just play. It's not that easy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of clubs, they have like corporations with normal companies where the players are working like half-time or full-time, and maybe they have an issue of COVID-19 as well, and can't give them any work for next season maybe, and then only they have this little contract for their clubs and can't afford the lifestyle anymore.
Bruno, what is your wish list for women's football coming out of the COVID-19 crisis?
To maybe emphasize the fact that we need more professionalization, we need, of course, more money, and we need to create a business model who make women football more sustainable. And this is, I think, the way to think on a midterm and a long-term projects. Once again, even if the numbers are not that high, it doesn't matter. We just need to find a business model who makes the clubs break even in their budget and quite independent. Whereas when you can see with Viola on an amateur level, it's difficult to find some resources. And even for Bayern Munich or Paris Saint-Germain, we are not earning money. We are just dependent of what the top management of the club wants to give to women football. And I think for the future and for make it as sustainable as possible, we need to find a business model.
Viola, your wish list for women's football?
Yeah, actually, I'm on the side from Bruno, because it's I think for the future very important that we get a break even, that we're not that depending on a men's game anymore, that we have our own business, that we can pay our players from our sponsors contracts and stuff like that. And it's always depending kind of like on the men's side. And it would be nice that at least the first leagues in every country can like or have an break even.
I'm smiling at you, Bianca.
My wish list. So my wish list, I think, first of all, is really to get more professionalism in the women's game, and not even on top level, even on the other levels. I think this is, and even on federations, doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be the German federation. It can be like a small federation. It's like more professionalism in the game, in the women's game. Second, I think more openness from sponsors, about women's sport or women's sport in general, not only women's football, but in women's sport in general. And the other thing is, I would really, I think outside the box.
I think that's a good final part. I'm thinking outside the box. At CONCACAF, we had Karina LeBlanc join us as head of women's football, and consistently she's talking about educating women around thinking outside the box with new solutions and new models, because in the CONCACAF region, we have the USA, the world champions, a fantastic development model. And then we have other countries which are developing and moving towards professionalization and trying to increase the participation of the game. Back to the MIP network, and really through thought leadership and education with the alumni that we have, what role can we play in contributing to the ongoing discussion around COVID-19 and football in general? Viola?
Actually, we can help each other. We can use the network. We can be a big voice to not forget any stakeholders, to make us strong for any stakeholders or which will forget from the associations, from the clubs, and help each other get concepts how to bring every club, every player through this crisis, and try to be a big voice.
Bianca?
Yeah, I think it's the same. Using a network we have a huge network to as well using our knowledge, not in the positions we are right now, but the way we went through as a player, the way we went, or the way we went through to our professional jobs. And I think it's really important to have a voice.
Bruno?
Yeah, no, I mean, this is an amazing experience for me to work in women's football. Even if it's the same sport, it's a bit different. And I really like it. I really enjoy it. And maybe it can be also, I can be an example for men to go to work in women's football and to bring something from the men's with experience, with the expertise we can have during our football players. And yeah, expertise and experience and network can be the key to make it better and better.
I agree on all of those points. I think as a network, the fact that we can have these discussions, the fact that we are in communication, that everybody is taking up different roles and that we can support each other, share ideas, thought leadership, I think those are huge opportunities for us. And it's something that we should continue, whether it's producing this kind of content, whether it's communicating on the various platforms that we have in place. I think the alumni have a really important role to play as we come out of this really unfortunate situation.
Jason, can I add something?
Yeah, please add something.
No, I just wanted to thank you for hosting the debate. You have been outstanding.
Thank you.
Clap your hands for Jason.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your time. That unfortunately is all we have time for. Much thanks to the panel, Bianca, Bruno, and Viola, for your much valued contribution. I think we touched on a number of themes and came up with some valuable insight and findings regarding women's football's response to COVID-19. This is, of course, the first of a series of online discussions, so we hope that you all stay tuned. We'll be inviting more of our MIP family to join this conversation from the comfort of their homes, discussing various topics that are affecting our game during this pandemic and sharing some of our experiences. I must stress that even in these challenging and difficult times, communication is vital. And by communicating and putting together such talks and such content, I think on these video platforms, it ensures that the MIP Alumni Network can continue to give back to the game through education, leadership, and of course, thoughtful conversation. We are in unprecedented times, and we all have a responsibility as a footballing community to come together and support our industry. So stay tuned for another episode and be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Feel free to drop a comment and let's continue to talk as we are all in this together. Stay home and most importantly, stay safe.